The bullet left her rifle before the muzzle flash could blind her. It did not matter. Yolanda Achebe had not aimed with her eyes in 6 years. Through the sheets of rain, turning the Colombian jungle into a vertical river, she counted the heartbeats between shots. 3 hostiles at 40 meters, 2 at 60, 1 moving right, trying to flank Sergeant Odia's position. She adjusted her breathing, listened to the rain pattern disrupted by a running body. Squeezed. The flanker dropped. Somewhere behind her, Captain Ellington was screaming into a dead radio, demanding air support that would never come through this storm. But that was 72 hours from now. Before we dive into how Master Sergeant Yolanda Achebe became the deadliest ghost in that jungle, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you have known someone who served with a secret nobody understood. 72 hours earlier, Fort Bragg sat under a gray Carolina sky. Yolanda stood alone in her quarters, boots off, feet planted on the cold floor. She closed her eyes. Not that closing them changed much anymore. She extended her arms and began moving through the space, fingertips brushing the wall at exactly the distance she had memorized. 14 steps from the bed to the bathroom door, 7 from the door to the sink, 3 from the sink to the toilet. Every surface mapped, every obstacle cataloged. This was how she started each day, calibrating, remembering, preparing for a world she could barely see. The knock came at 0600 exactly. Private Tomas Delgado's voice carried through the door, hesitant and young. "Master Sergeant Achebe, I am sorry to bother you, but Sergeant Odia said you might be able to help me with something." She opened the door and stepped aside. The private entered, and she heard his boots shuffle with nervousness. She had already assessed him by sound. 6'1" based on where his voice originated, maybe 180 pounds from the weight of his footsteps, and terrified based on the slight tremor in his breathing. "Land navigation," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, ma'am. I keep getting turned around at night. Failed my last 2 attempts. 1 more, and I'm out of the program." Yolanda moved to her desk, fingers finding the drawer handle without searching. She pulled out a compass and held it toward the sound of his breathing. "The problem is you are relying on your eyes," she said. "At night, your eyes lie to you. Every shadow becomes a landmark that is not there. Every tree looks the same. So what do?" She placed the compass in his palm. "Learn to navigate without looking. Feel the slope of the ground beneath your feet. Count your paces. Listen to how sound changes when you're near water or moving through open ground versus dense brush. The land talks to you if you stop trying to see it." For 20 minutes, she taught him techniques she had spent years perfecting. How to feel magnetic north through the way the compass needle settled. How to use ambient sound to gauge distance and direction. How to trust his body when his eyes failed him. When he left, his footsteps carried more confidence. He would pass his next evaluation. She was certain of it. The formation at 0700 brought her into proximity with the rest of the team. She felt their presence before anyone spoke. Sergeant First Class Kwame Odia positioned himself at her right, where he always stood. A small gesture of protection she had never asked for, but had come to rely on. Staff Sergeant Gene Sue Park stood to her left, his breathing measured and skeptical. Sergeant Mateo Reyes shuffled somewhere behind them, young and eager, his energy practically vibrating through the morning air. And then there was Captain Bryce Ellington. She heard him approach from 30 meters away. The deliberate cadence of an officer who believed his rank made him important. The slight drag of his left foot from an old injury he thought nobody noticed. The way he cleared his throat before speaking, establishing dominance before uttering a word. "Listen up," Ellington announced. "We have orders. DEA agent Carmen Vasquez was kidnapped 4 days ago by Cartel del Pacifico. Colombian government has requested joint special operations assistance. We deploy in 18 hours. He continued with operational details, but Yolanda was listening to something else. The subtle shift in his voice when he mentioned her assignment. "Master Sergeant Achebe, you will be running rear security." The words landed like a slap. Rear security. The position reserved for the least essential member of the team. She was their sniper, and he was putting her where she would be useless. Sir Adia interjected, With respect, Achebe is the best long-range shooter in the battalion. Rear security does not utilize her capabilities. Ellington's response came quick and cold. I am aware of the Master Sergeant's reported capabilities. I have also reviewed her performance evaluations and found several inconsistencies I intend to address. For now, she goes where I put her. The formation ended. The team dispersed. But Ellington's boots moved toward her instead of away. He stopped close enough that she could smell his coffee breath. When he spoke, his voice was low, meant only for her. I know something is wrong with you, Achebe. I do not know what yet. Maybe it is drugs. Maybe it is psychological. Maybe it is something else entirely. But I have been watching you. The way you move. The way you tilt your head when people talk. The way you touch everything before you use it. Something is off. She kept her expression neutral, controlled her breathing, gave him nothing. Sir, I am not sure what you are implying. I am not implying anything. I am telling you that I will find out what you are hiding. And when I do, your career is over. Whatever favors got you into this unit will not protect you from me. He walked away. His footsteps faded into the distance, but his threat lingered in the humid Carolina air like poison. Oduya appeared at her side. His voice was barely a whisper. That man has been building a file on you for 3 months. Every time you do something he does not understand, he writes it down. I know, Yolanda replied. What are you going to do about it? She turned toward the barracks, already counting her steps, already mapping the route her feet knew by memory. My job, she said. Same as always. The C-17 hummed through the darkness at 30,000 feet. Yolanda sat with her back against the fuselage, running her fingers over her equipment in a sequence that looked like superstition but was actually survival. Rifle stock, 17 inches from the grip to the butt plate. Scope housing, cold metal with 3 adjustment knobs positioned at 12, 3, and 9. Magazine pouches on her vest, for total 20 rounds each. Everything in its place. Everything memorized. Across the cargo bay, she heard Odia's steady breathing. He was pretending to sleep, but his respiration was too controlled. He was watching her. He had been watching her for 2 years, ever since they served together in Afghanistan. He had never asked questions, never demanded explanations. He simply positioned himself where she needed him and trusted that she knew what she was doing. Park sat somewhere to her right, his fingers tapping against his knee in a rhythm that suggested anxiety masked as boredom. Reyes was genuinely asleep, his breathing deep and untroubled by the weight of what waited below. The young ones always slept before missions. They had not yet learned what experience taught. That rest before combat was a luxury purchased with ignorance. Ellington moved through the cabin, his footsteps deliberate and investigative. She tracked it by sound as he checked on each team member. When he reached her position, he stopped. Going over your gear again. Achebe? Yes, sir. 3rd time this flight. Most soldiers check once. Maybe twice if they're nervous. She kept her hands moving. I prefer thoroughness to assumption, sir. He crouched beside her. She felt the air pressure change as he lowered himself to her level. You know what I noticed in your service record? 18 months in a rehabilitation facility after your last deployment. Medical files are sealed. No explanation. Just an 18-month gap, and then suddenly you were back on active duty, assigned to a special operations support unit with a performance rating that says you were the best sniper in the division. She said nothing. 18 months is a long time, he continued. Long enough to develop dependencies. Long enough to hide problems that should have ended a career. I requested your medical files. Twice. Both requests were denied at a level above my pay grade. That tells me someone is protecting you. And protected soldiers make me nervous. He stood and walked away before she could respond. His message was clear. He was digging. He would keep digging until he found what she had buried. The memory came unbidden. A hospital room with walls she could barely see. A doctor's voice cutting through the morphine haze. The damage to your optic nerves is extensive and irreversible. You have retained approximately 20% of your central vision, but your peripheral vision is essentially gone. I am sorry, Master Sergeant. Your career as it existed is over. But it was not over. She had refused to let it be over. The plane began its descent 3 hours later. Colombian airspace. Jungle below that stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction. Cartel territory where American soldiers operated in shadows and plausible deniability. They touched down at a forward operating base carved out of the green. The humidity hit her like a physical force when the ramp lowered, thick and wet and alive with sounds she had never encountered. Insects screaming in frequencies that layered over each other. Birds calling warnings through the canopy. The jungle itself breathing around them. Captain Sofia Mendoza met them on the tarmac. Her voice carried the clipped efficiency of someone who had been fighting this war for years. Welcome to Colombia. I am your liaison with the National Police Special Operations Unit. We will be working together on the extraction. Ellington stepped forward to shake her hand. Yolanda heard the slight pause in Mendoza's breathing when she saw the team composition. Your sniper, Mendoza said. She is a woman. Ellington's response dripped with false diplomacy. The United States Army assigns personnel based on capability scores, not gender. Master Sergeant Achebi qualified for this unit through the same standards as everyone else. The words sounded like defense. They were actually condemnation. He was planting seeds, letting the Colombian captain know that he shared her doubts. The briefing room was underground, cool and damp, smelling of mold and old coffee. Yolanda positioned herself near the back where she could listen without being observed. Maps covered the walls, but she did not need to see them. She had memorized the terrain files during the flight, running her fingers over raised relief maps she had requested specifically for the mission. Mendoza laid out the situation. Agent Vasquez is being held at a cartel compound approximately 40 kilometers northeast of our position. Primary jungle. Triple canopy coverage. No satellite imiri penetración. We have human intelligence confirming she is alive but injured. The cartel is demanding the release of 3 high-value prisoners in exchange. Washington has refused negotiation. What is our window? Ellington asked. 72 hours. After that, our sources indicate she will be moved to a secondary location we have not identified. Once she is moved, extraction becomes significantly more complicated. Yolanda listened as they discussed approach vectors and contingency plans. Her fingers traced patterns on her thigh, mapping the terrain from memory. Elevation changes, water features, potential overwatch positions. She was building a 3-dimensional model in her mind, one that did not require eyes to navigate. Then Mendoza mentioned the weather. There is a complication. A tropical system is moving faster than predicted. We will have approximately 6 hours of clear conditions once we begin movement. After that, we're looking at 48 hours of continuous heavy rain. Zero visibility. Satellite communication will be degraded. Air support will be impossible. The room went quiet. Zero visibility changed everything. Snipers were useless in conditions where they could not see their targets. Yolanda felt something shift in her chest. Not fear, something closer to dark anticipation. For 6 years, she had hidden her blindness by performing in conditions where everyone could see. She had learned to fake it, to compensate, to work twice as hard as anyone else just to appear normal. But zero visibility meant no one could see. It meant the playing field was finally level. Ellington spoke into the silence. Given the weather conditions, I am reassessing team assignments. Achebi, you will remain at the forward operating base as contingency communication relay. Sir, Oduya's voice cut sharp. That makes no tactical sense. If we lose visibility, we need our best shooter forward, not back at base. In zero visibility, shooters are useless, Sergeant. Basic tactics. Yolanda stood. The room turned toward the sound of her movement. With respect, sir, she said, zero visibility affects targeting, not accuracy. A trained sniper can engage at close to medium range using alternative acquisition methods. Sound, movement patterns, thermal differential if equipment holds. Removing your precision asset from the field reduces your options, not increases them. Ellington's silence was heavy with anger. She had contradicted him publicly, in front of a foreign officer. The file in his head was growing thicker by the second. Mendoza spoke before he could respond. The Master Sergeant makes a valid point, Captain. In jungle conditions, engagement ranges are reduced regardless. A sniper's value is precision, not distance. I would recommend keeping your full team forward. The decision hung in the air. Ellington could overrule. He had the authority, but doing so now would look like personal vendetta rather than tactical judgment. Fine, he said. Full team moves out at 2200. But Achebe, when this weather hits and you cannot perform, I will be documenting every failure. She nodded once. Understood, sir. The briefing ended. The team filed out. But Yolanda remained for a moment, her fingers still tracing invisible maps on her thigh. The storm was coming, and for the first time in 6 years, she was not afraid of the dark. The jungle swallowed them whole. Yolanda moved through the darkness like water through rock, finding the paths that others could not sense. The canopy above blocked what little moonlight existed, reducing the world to shades of black that even soldiers with perfect vision struggled to navigate. But for her, this darkness was no different than daylight. She had lived in it for 6 years. The team moved in single file. Odia behind her, then Park, then Reyes, with Ellington bringing up the rear. Their night vision equipment cast the world in green phosphorescence. But the jungle was so dense that even technology provided only fragments of clarity. Yolanda did not use her night vision. She wore it because not wearing it would raise questions, but she navigated by other means. The sound of her boots told her about the ground beneath. Soft compression meant mud. Sharp feedback meant root systems. Hollow echoes meant she was approaching a depression or water feature. The air itself spoke to her, carrying information about obstacles and openings through subtle changes in pressure and humidity. She raised her fist. The team froze. Ahead, 40 meters, maybe 50. She heard them before anyone else could. Footsteps that did not belong to the jungle. The metallic whisper of weapons against clothing. Voices speaking Spanish in hushed tones. Oduya moved close. His whisper was barely a breath. What do you have? Patrol. For men. Moving east to west across our path. He did not ask how she knew. He had stopped asking those questions 18 months ago, when he watched her put 3 rounds through a target at 600 meters during a sandstorm that had grounded every other shooter on the range. The team melted into the vegetation. Yolanda pressed herself against a tree trunk, feeling the bark against her cheek, listening to the patrol approach. Their footsteps grew louder. Closer. She could hear individual breathing patterns now. One man was a smoker, his lungs working harder than the others. Another walked with a slight limp, favoring his right leg. The third was nervous, his breath coming quick and shallow. The fourth moved with the quiet confidence of experience. They passed within 15 meters. Yolanda counted their footsteps as they faded. 30 seconds. 60. 90. When she was certain they were beyond hearing range, she signaled the team forward. Ellington appeared at her shoulder as they resumed movement. His voice was a harsh whisper. How did you detect them before anyone else? Our night vision should have picked them up first. Sound carries differently in jungle environments, sir. I have trained for this. She felt his skepticism like heat radiating from his body. He wanted to challenge her, wanted to demand a real explanation. But they were in hostile territory, and even his vendetta had limits. The next 3 hours were a masterclass in tension. The jungle fought them at every step. Vines grabbed at ankles. Roots conspired to twist knees. The humidity made every breath feel like drowning. And through it all, Yolanda guided them, finding passages through terrain that should have been impassable. They encountered 2 more patrols. Each time, she detected them first. Each time, the team froze and waited while cartel soldiers passed within meters of their position. Each time, Ellington's silence grew heavier with questions he could not ask. At 0300, they reached the observation point. The cartel compound spread below them in a valley carved from the jungle. Even through the darkness, the layout was clear from the sounds. Generators humming at the northern edge. Dogs barking near what had to be a kennel. voices and music drifting from a central structure. And beneath it all, the measured footsteps of guards walking perimeter routes. Yolanda built the compound in her mind. She listened to the guards and mapped their patterns. Every 4 minutes, 2 men passed the eastern gate. Every 6 minutes, a single guard circled the main building. The dogs were rotated every 30 minutes based on the changing bark patterns. Park sat up beside her with a spotting scope. He began calling out what he saw. Main building at center. 2 stories. Looks like converted plantation house. I count 8 guards on visible patrol routes. Probable command post on 2nd floor based on antenna placement. Yolanda absorbed his visual information and layered it over her acoustic map. The picture grew more complete. Vehicle depot on the west side. Park continued. For trucks. 1 technical with mounted weapon. Barracks structure to the south. I count at least 20 men moving in and out. 20 visible, Yolanda said. But listen to the footsteps inside the main building. There are more. The floor creaks in at least 6 distinct patterns beyond what we are seeing outside. Park went quiet. He pressed his ear toward the compound as if trying to hear what she heard. After a long moment, he spoke. How can you possibly hear footsteps inside a building from this distance? She did not answer. Oduya shifted closer, creating a subtle barrier between her and the question. The hostage, Oduya said, redirecting. Any visual confirmation? Park returned to his scope. Negative. But there is a structure on the east side with bars on the windows. Probable holding location. Yolanda listened to that structure. She heard nothing from inside. Either the building was soundproofed, or the hostage was unconscious. Neither option was good. Ellington crawled up beside them. His breathing was labored from the movement, and she could smell fresh sweat cutting through the jungle rot. Assessment, he demanded. 3 times the guard count we expected, Yolanda said. Patrol patterns suggest they are anticipating company. Someone told them we were coming. The words hung in the humid air. A mole. Compromised intelligence. The mission parameters had just shifted from difficult to potentially suicidal. Ellington processed for several seconds. We abort. Pull back to the FOB and request new orders. Sir, if we abort, they will move her. Yolanda kept her voice level. We lose our window. We do not have the numbers for this, Achebi. Basic math. The math changes if we are precise instead of aggressive. I can create gaps in their security. Targeted elimination of key positions. We slip in during the confusion. You want to engage a fortified position with 5 operators based on your ability to shoot people you cannot see in the dark. I want to complete the mission, sir, which is what we came here to do. Thunder rolled in the distance. The leading edge of the storm. They had maybe 2 hours before the weather closed in completely. Park spoke without looking up from his scope. She is right about the patrol patterns. If we can take out the guards at the eastern gate and the roving patrol simultaneously, there is a 30-second window to breach the perimeter. Oduya added his voice. I have seen her shoot, Captain, in conditions worse than this. Ellington's silence stretched. Yolanda could hear his jaw tightening, the subtle grind of teeth against teeth. Fine, he said finally. We wait for the storm. Use the weather as cover. Achebi, you get exactly 3 shots to prove you can do what you claim. Miss once, and we abort immediately. Understood, sir. The first drops of rain began to fall. Fat and heavy and warm. Within minutes, the drops became a curtain. Within an hour, the curtain became a wall. The jungle disappeared. The compound below became nothing but sound and memory. Yolanda smiled in the darkness. This was her element. This was where she had lived for 6 years, in a world without light, where survival meant learning to see with everything except her eyes. The storm had arrived, and so had her moment. The rain erased the world. Yolanda lay prone at the observation point, her rifle extended toward a compound she could not see but knew intimately through sound. The storm had transformed the jungle into a roaring void where visibility dropped to less than 3 feet. Park had abandoned his spotting scope. Oduya kept checking his night vision and finding only static green darkness. Even the thermal imaging had failed, overwhelmed by the uniform temperature of water falling everywhere at once. But Yolanda was listening. The rain created a baseline of white noise, but within that noise were disruptions. Footsteps splashing through puddles. The metallic ping of water hitting the technical truck's mounted weapon. Guards cursing in Spanish as they huddled under whatever cover they could find. The compound was still there, still alive, still holding a woman who would die if they did not act. Ellington's voice came through the comm unit, distorted by the storm. Night vision is useless. Thermal is gone. We are effectively blind. Yolanda, Keter Mike. I have Easter Gate guards. 2 targets. Range approximately 210 meters. Silence on the channel. Then Ellington's voice, thick with disbelief. You cannot possibly have a visual in these conditions. I do not need a visual, sir. I have their position. More silence. She could imagine him trying to process her words, trying to fit them into a framework that made sense to someone who had always relied on eyes to aim a weapon. Oduya spoke next. What do you need from us? When I take the first shot, the roving patrol will respond. They will move toward the gate to investigate. I need someone to mark their position verbally so I can track their movement through the rain noise. Park's voice joined the channel. I can do that. I cannot see them, but I can hear them once they start moving. The plan crystallized in the darkness. Yolanda would take the gate guards. Park would call out the roving patrol's movement. She would eliminate them before they could raise an alarm. 30 seconds of precision violence, and they would have their window. Ellington's authorization came reluctantly. Take the shot, Achebe. God help us all if you miss. She did not respond. Her focus narrowed to the sounds below. The Eastern Gate guard were talking to each other, their voices carrying fragments of conversation through the rain. One was complaining about the weather. The other was responding with something about a woman in the village. Their positions were fixed, approximately 4 feet apart, both standing under an overhang that created a subtle acoustic shadow in the rainfall. Yolanda adjusted her aim based on the sound. She accounted for the rain's effect on the bullet's trajectory. She measured the wind by the way it shifted the rainfall's angle against her cheek. Exhale. Squeeze. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. The shot vanished into the storm. One guard stopped talking mid-sentence. She cycled the bolt and fired again before the second guard could process what had happened. Both voices went silent. Park's voice came immediately. Movement. Roving patrol responding. Coming from the north side of the main building. 2 men. Moving fast toward the gate. Yolanda tracked the sound of splashing footsteps through the rain. They were running, which made them louder. Easier to locate. She mapped their trajectory, calculated where they would be in 3 seconds, and adjusted her aim to meet them. 2 shots. 2 impacts. 2 bodies hitting wet ground. The compound continued its routine. The generator hummed. The dogs barked at the thunder. No alarm sounded. For men dead, and no one had noticed. Oduya appeared beside her, his hand finding her shoulder in the darkness. That was impossible. I watched you do it, and I still do not believe it. She allowed herself a single breath of satisfaction before responding. Eastern approach is clear. We have maybe 90 seconds before someone notices the guards are not responding to radio checks. The team moved. Yolanda led them down the slope toward the compound, navigating by memory and sound. The terrain she had mapped acoustically from above now guided her feet. Depression here. Root system there. Mud giving way to gravel as they approached the perimeter. They reached the eastern gate without incident. The bodies of the guards lay where they had fallen, rain already washing away the evidence of violence. Yolanda stepped over them without pausing. Sentiment was a luxury for after the mission. The compound interior was chaos organized into patterns. She heard movement in the barracks to the south. At least 15 men, based on the overlapping footsteps and voices. The main building held another 8 to 10. The kennel dogs had gone quiet, which meant a handler was with them, keeping them calm during the storm. Reyes spoke for the first time since they breached. Where's the hostage? East structure, Yolanda said. The one with barred windows. But there is a problem. What problem? I'm not hearing anything from inside. Either she's unconscious, gagged, or the building has some kind of soundproofing. Or she is dead, Ellington added. If she were dead, they would not still be guarding the compound this heavily. She is alive. She's just quiet. They moved toward the holding structure, hugging the shadows that did not exist visually but were created acoustically by the buildings breaking the rain's pattern. Yolanda guided them around two more guards who had taken shelter under an awning, their attention focused on staying dry rather than watching for infiltrators. The holding structure was a converted storage building. Concrete walls, metal door. The bars on the windows were new, hastily welded based on the rough texture she felt when she brushed her fingers against them. Park tried the door. Locked. Heavy deadbolt. Reyes can breach it, Oduya said, but that is going to make noise. Yolanda pressed her ear against the metal door. Through the storm and the concrete, she caught something. Faint, rhythmic, the sound of labored breathing. She is in there, Yolanda confirmed. Alive, but her breathing is wrong. Injured or sick. We need to move fast. Ellington positioned himself to provide cover. Do it. Reyes placed a breaching charge on the lock. The team stacked against the wall. Yolanda felt the tension in the air. The collective held breath before violence. The charge detonated with a sharp crack that was swallowed by thunder. Reyes kicked the door inward. Yolanda was second through the breach, her rifle up, scanning with ears instead of eyes. The room was small, single occupant, breathing coming from the far corner. Clear, she called. Park moved past her with a flashlight, the first artificial light any of them had used in hours. In its beam, Yolanda caught fragmented images through her damaged vision. A shape huddled against the wall, dark hair matted with blood. Handbound. Agent Vasquez, Park said. We are American military. We are here to extract you. The woman's voice came weak but defiant. About time. Oduya moved to cut her bonds while Yolanda covered the door. Outside, she heard the first signs of alarm. Shouts in the distance. Running footsteps. The dogs beginning to bark with purpose. They know we are here, Yolanda announced. We need to move. Now. The mission clock had started. They had the hostage. Now, they just had to get out alive. And the entire compound was waking up around them. The compound erupted into chaos. Yolanda heard all. Doors slamming open in the barracks. Boots pounding through mud. Commands shouted in Spanish, overlapping and urgent. The dogs released from their kennel, their barks turning from alarm to hunting. Flashlight beams cut uselessly through the rain, finding nothing but water and darkness. We need to move, she said. South wall. There is a gap in their coverage while they respond to the breach point. Oduya had Agent Vasquez over his shoulder in a fireman's carry. The woman was conscious but weak. Her breathing labored against his back. Park took point with his weapon raised. Reyes covered their six. Ellington moved beside Yolanda, his presence heavy with unspoken questions. They pushed into the storm. The rain hammered down with fury that seemed personal. Yolanda navigated by counting steps and listening for obstacles. The compound's layout existed in her mind as a three-dimensional map of sounds and textures. Generator to the north, 50 meters. Barracks to the east, 30 meters, and closing as cartel soldiers spilled out. Main building to the west, with at least 6 men now on the second-floor balcony, shouting and pointing flashlights into the void. Contact right, Park called. Yolanda heard them a fraction of a second before Park spoke. 3 men moving to intercept, their boots splashing through the same path the team needed to take. She raised her rifle and fired 3 times in rapid succession. The splashing stopped. Park stared in her direction. His night vision was still useless. He had not seen the targets. He had not seen her shoot. He had only heard her rifle and the sudden silence that followed. How he breathed. Later, Yolanda said, "Keep moving." They reached the south wall, a concrete barrier 8 feet high, with razor wire at the top. Reyes moved to help Oduya lift the hostage while Park prepared to boost them over. The dogs found them first. Yolanda heard the animals before she heard their handlers. For dogs, moving fast, trained to track and hold. Behind them, at least 6 men with weapons. I need 30 seconds, Oduya said, struggling to position Vasquez for the climb. You have 10, Yolanda replied. She turned toward the approaching sounds and dropped to one knee. The dogs were spreading out, trying to flank. Smart animals. well-trained. But they were loud, their paws heavy in the mud, their breathing eager and predatory. She fired at the lead dog. It yelped and went silent. The others hesitated, confused by the death they could not see coming. She fired twice more. 2 more dogs down. The 4th dog reached her. It hit her from the side, jaws snapping toward her throat. She caught it with her forearm, feeling teeth puncture through her sleeve and into flesh. Pain exploded up her arm, but she did not scream. She found her knife with her free hand and drove it into the animal's neck. The jaws released. The dog collapsed. Yolanda stood, blood running down her arm, and faced the handlers. They were shouting, trying to locate her in the darkness. Their flashlights swept wildly, finding Rain and nothing else. She was a shadow among shadows, a ghost in their own compound. She shot all 6 in less than 4 seconds. Sound was her scope. Fear was her advantage. Achebe. Oduya's voice cut through the rain. We are over. Move. She ran for the wall, her wounded arms screaming with every step. Park was waiting at the top, reaching down. She grabbed his hand with her good arm and let him haul her up and over. The razor wire caught her leg as she tumbled down the other side, adding another wound to the collection. The jungle received them like a mother accepting damaged children. They ran. There was no other option. Behind them, the compound had organized. Trucks were starting. The technical with the mounted gun roared to life. The cartel would pursue with everything they had. Vasquez was fading. Her breathing had become shallow and irregular against Oduya's back. Whatever injuries she had sustained during captivity were catching up with her. She needs medical attention, Oduya said between breaths. Soon. Extraction point is 2 kilometers northeast, Ellington responded. Can you make it? Do I have a choice? They pushed through vegetation that fought every step. Vines grabbed, branches slashed. The ground sucked at their boots with hungry mud. And through it all, the rain continued its relentless assault, turning the world into a sensory void that only Yolanda could navigate. She led them by sound and memory. The terrain she had memorized from maps now guided her through reality. Ridgeline ahead, requiring a descent into a creek bed. The creek would mask their sound from pursuers. 300 meters along the water, then up the opposite bank toward the extraction zone. They were halfway down the ridge when Reyes screamed. Yolanda spun toward the sound. She heard the wet impact of a body hitting mud. Heard Reyes cursing in pain. Heard the others stopping, turning, trying to find him in the darkness. My leg, Reyes gasped. I am hit. Sniper. Has to be sniper. Another shot cracked through the rain. This one hit a tree inches from Park's head. They had overwatch. Someone with a rifle and night vision that actually worked, positioned somewhere on the ridge they had just descended. Everyone down, Ellington ordered. The team dropped into the mud. Vasquez groaned as Oduya shielded her with his body. Yolanda pressed herself flat, listening, trying to locate the shooter through the storm. The sniper was good, patient. He was not firing blindly. He was waiting for movement, for sound, for any indication of targets. Reyes is bleeding bad, Park reported. Femoral area. He needs a tourniquet now. If anyone moves, they die, Ellington said. That sniper has us pinned. Yolanda closed her eyes. A meaningless gesture, but it helped her focus. The sniper was somewhere above them. Probably 200 meters, based on the sound delay between shot and impact. He had elevation advantage and functional optics. He could wait them out, pick them off one by one whenever they tried to move. But he had one weakness. He was relying on his eyes. Yolanda began to crawl. Not toward cover, toward the shooter. Achebe, what are you doing? Ellington hissed. She did not answer. She moved through the mud like a snake, making no sound that could be heard above the rain. Her wounded arm left a trail of blood that washed away instantly. Her torn leg dragged behind her, pain distant and irrelevant. The sniper fired again. The shot passed 3 feet above her head, aimed at where Park had been. She kept crawling. 50 meters. 100. The ridge grew steeper. She climbed with her fingers and her knees, pulling herself upward through vegetation that tore at her skin. At 150 meters, she heard him. A subtle shift in position. The creak of a rifle stock against the shoulder. Breathing that was controlled but present. She had him. Yolanda raised her rifle, aimed at the sound of human respiration, and fired once. The breathing stopped. She keyed her comm sniper down. Move Reyes now. Yolanda descended the ridge with blood running from wounds she had stopped counting. Her arm throbbed where the dog had torn through muscle. Her leg burned where razor wire had carved a groove through her calf. None of it mattered. Reyes was dying, and they were still a kilometer from extraction. She found the team huddled in a depression where rainwater was pooling into a shallow stream. Park had a tourniquet cinched around Reyes's thigh, but the young sergeant's breathing was rapid and weak. Shock was setting in. "We need to move him," Park said. "He is maybe 20 minutes before the blood loss becomes irreversible." Oduya was still carrying Vasquez, who had slipped into unconsciousness. The woman's weight was dragging at him, but he showed no sign of releasing her. "I can take Reyes," Yolanda said. Ellington's voice cut through the rain. "You are wounded. Multiple times. You cannot carry a grown man through a kilometer of jungle. Watch me." She moved to Reyes and pulled him into a fireman's carry. The weight sent agony screaming through her injured arm, but she locked her jaw and straightened. Pain was information. Information could be ignored. They moved. The jungle had become a living adversary. Every step required negotiation with mud that wanted to swallow boots whole. Every meter demanded payment in exhaustion and blood. Yolanda navigated by sound and memory while carrying a man who outweighed her by 40 pounds, and she did not slow down. Park fell in a step beside her. His breathing was controlled, but she could hear the questions building in his chest like pressure before an explosion. At the compound, he said quietly, "You shot 4 guards in conditions where I could not see my own hand. You tracked that sniper by sound alone and killed him at 150 meters in storm. And now you are carrying Reyes like your wounds do not exist." She kept walking. The creek bed was ahead. She could hear the water running faster now, swollen by the rain. "Where are you?" Park asked. The question hung in the darkness. Yolanda felt the weight of 6 years pressing against her chest. 6 years of hiding. 6 years of pretending. 6 years of being something she could never explain to people who navigated the world with eyes that worked. Before she could answer, her foot caught a route she had not mapped. She stumbled. Reyes shifted on her shoulder, and the movement tore her grip loose. They both went down into the mud. Park grabbed for Reyes while Yolanda tried to right herself. In the chaos of the fall, her hands swept across her face, and her fingers caught the edge of her tinted glasses. The glasses came off. Park's flashlight swept across her face before she could turn away. For one frozen second, the beam illuminated her eyes. She heard his sharp intake of breath. The flashlight trembled in his grip. "Your eyes," he whispered. "They are clouded, damaged. You cannot see. You cannot possibly see." Yolanda found her glasses in the mud and pressed them back onto her face. The gesture was futile. The secret she had protected for 6 years was bleeding out faster than Reyes. "Keep moving," she said. "How is any of this possible?" Park's voice cracked with disbelief. "You are blind. How can a blind woman be a sniper? How can you do any of what I have watched you do tonight?" Oduya appeared beside them. His hand found Yolanda's shoulder and squeezed once. A gesture of solidarity that said more than words. "She has been this way for 6 years," Oduya said. "Since Syria. I figured it out 18 months ago, and I have never seen it slow her down once." Ellington's footsteps approached. He had heard everything. The silence that preceded his voice was heavy with recalculation. "You are telling me," he said slowly, "that I have spent 3 months trying to prove something is wrong with my sniper, and the answer is that she is blind. Actually blind. And somehow still the most effective shooter I have ever seen." Yolanda lifted Reyes back onto her shoulder. The young sergeant groaned but did not wake. "I lost 80% of my vision in a chemical weapons exposure," she said. "The Army would have discharged me. Ended my career. Taken away everything I had trained my entire life to become. So I spent 2 years learning to do my job without eyes. Sound, vibration, spatial memory, air pressure changes. The world talks to you if you learn to listen. She started walking again. The creek was close now. She could hear it clearly. A man named Colonel James Whitmore believed in me when no one else would. He trained me in secret, helped me pass the evaluations, forged the medical clearances that kept me on active duty. If anyone finds out, he goes to prison for the rest of his life. And I lose everything. The team moved in silence through the rain. Yolanda felt their eyes on her, though eyes meant nothing to her anymore. She felt their reassessment, their struggle to reconcile what they knew with what they had witnessed. Park spoke first. That shot on the sniper, 150 meters, in a storm, using only sound. I heard him breathe. Yolanda said simply, "Everyone breathes." The creek appeared through the darkness, running fast and cold. Yolanda waded in without hesitation, holding Reyes above the current. The water rose to her waist, shockingly cold, washing blood and mud from her wounds. Odia followed with Vasquez. Park came next, then Ellington. They moved downstream, letting the water carry them toward extraction. The current masked their sound from any pursuit. The rain masked everything else. Ellington drew alongside her. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then his voice came, stripped of the hostility that had defined their relationship for months. "I built a file on you, documented every anomaly, every moment that did not make sense. I was convinced you were hiding something that endangered the team." "I was hiding something," Yolanda replied. "Just not what you thought." "No." He paused, and she heard something shift in his breathing. Something that might have been shame. "I thought you were weak, compromised, a liability forced on my team by politics I did not understand. I never considered that you might be stronger than anyone I had ever served with." She did not respond. The admission cost him something, and she could respect that without needing to acknowledge it. The extraction point was 500 meters ahead. She could hear the clearing in the way the rain fell differently where the canopy broke. Helicopter rotors would be audible soon, if the pilots could fly in this weather. Reyes stirred on her shoulder. His voice came weak and confused. "Sergeant Achabe, are we dead?" "Not yet," she said. "Stay with me, Reyes. We're almost home." The rain began to ease. The storm was passing. Somewhere above the clouds, dawn was approaching. Yolanda kept walking toward the sound of salvation, carrying her wounded brother through a darkness that had been her home for 6 years. The extraction point was a clearing carved from the jungle by nature or explosives. Yolanda could not tell which. The rain had softened to a steady drizzle, and the sounds of the forest were returning. Insects resuming their chorus, birds testing tentative calls, the jungle remembering how to breathe. She lowered Reyes onto the wet grass and stepped back. Her arms trembled from the sustained effort of carrying him. Her wounded leg had gone partially numb, which was either a mercy or a warning sign. Park was already on the radio, calling for extraction. His voice carried the clipped urgency of a man who knew time was bleeding away. "Viper 6, this is Shadow Element. We have the package. 2, urgent surgical. Request immediate extraction at primary LZ." Static answered. Then a voice cut through, distorted but intelligible. "Shadow Element, Viper 6. Weather is marginal but flyable. Birds are inbound. ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes. An eternity when you were bleeding. A heartbeat when you were being hunted." Oduya laid Vasquez beside Reyes. The DEA agent had regained consciousness during the creek crossing, but she was weak, her words coming in fragments that did not always connect. "She has a head injury," Oduya said. "Probable concussion. Maybe worse. She needs imaging we cannot provide out here." Ellington moved to establish a perimeter, his professionalism overriding whatever personal reckoning was happening inside him. Park joined him, rifle raised, scanning the treeline with night vision that was finally useful again as the storm cleared. Yolanda found a position at the edge of the clearing and lowered herself to the ground. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the mission was fading, and pain was rushing in to fill the vacuum. Her arm had swollen around the dog bite, the flesh hot and tight. Her leg wound had reopened during the creek crossing, and she could feel blood pooling in her boot. Oduya appeared beside her. He did not speak at first, just sat in the grass, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "You carried him almost a full kilometer," he finally said, "with a torn arm and a shredded leg. I have seen men quit from less." Yolanda stared into the darkness that was her permanent companion. Quitting was never an option. If I quit, I prove everyone right. Every person who said a blind woman could not serve. Every officer who looked at my file and saw a liability instead of a soldier. I cannot give them that satisfaction. Oduya was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had softened. "Tell me about Colonel Whitmore." The name brought warmth to her chest despite the cold rain. "James Whitmore," she said, "retired Special Forces, 63 years old, lost his son in Afghanistan and never recovered from it. When I was in rehabilitation, learning to accept that my career was over, he showed up in my hospital room. Why? Because he had read my file, knew what I had accomplished before Syria, and he refused to believe that losing my sight meant losing my value. He said the army was making a mistake, and he intended to fix it." She remembered those early days, the frustration, the failures, the moments when she had wanted to surrender to the darkness and let it swallow her whole. "He trained me for 2 years," she continued. "Every day, sound shooting, spatial navigation, compensation techniques that nobody had ever tried because nobody had ever needed them. He mortgaged his house to fund equipment. He called in favors from people who owed him. He built a program from nothing, just for me. And the medical clearances. Forged. Every one of them. He knew a doctor at Walter Reed who owed him from Iraq. They created documentation showing my vision had recovered sufficiently for duty. It was fraud. Career-ending fraud for both of us if anyone discovered it." Oduya absorbed this in silence. The rain continued to fall, lighter now, almost gentle. "He sounds like a good man," Oduya said. "He is the best man I have ever known. And I have spent 6 years terrified that my secret would destroy him." She heard movement from the perimeter, Ellington's footsteps approaching. He stopped a few feet away, and she felt his presence like a weight in the air. "I owe you an apology," he said. The word came stiff, unpracticed. "I spent 3 months trying to end your career because I could not understand what I was seeing. I assumed deception meant weakness. I never considered it might mean strength beyond anything I could comprehend." Yolanda turned toward his voice. "You were doing your job, Captain, protecting your team from a perceived threat. I cannot fault you for that. I can fault myself." His voice cracked slightly. "I watched you carry Reyes through a kilometer of jungle with wounds that would have stopped most soldiers. I watched you kill a sniper you could not see from 150 meters. I have commanded special operations teams for 8 years, and I have never witnessed anything like what you did tonight." He moved closer. She heard him crouch beside her. "The file I built on you," he said. "Every document, every note, every observation. When we get back, I am destroying all of it. And if anyone ever questions your fitness for duty, they will have to go through me first." The words settled into her chest like medicine for a wound she had stopped acknowledging years ago. She had spent so long preparing for the day her secret would destroy her that she had never imagined it might set her free. "Thank you, Captain. Do not thank me. I am not doing you a favor. I am correcting a mistake." The sound of rotors broke through the jungle canopy, distant but approaching, the extraction birds cutting through the clearing weather. Park called from the perimeter. "Helicopters inbound." 2 minutes. Yolanda tried to stand and found her leg would not cooperate. The numbness had spread, and when she put weight on it, the limb buckled. Oduya caught her before she fell. "Easy, sister. You have done enough. I can walk. You have been walking for 6 years without eyes. Tonight you get to rest." He lifted her arm over his shoulder and supported her weight as they moved toward the center of the clearing. Park had popped a chemical light stick, its green glow marking the landing zone. The helicopters descended through the mist, their rotors beating the air into submission. Yolanda felt the downdraft against her face, smelled the exhaust, heard the crew chiefs calling instructions. They loaded Reyes first, then Vasquez. Medical personnel swarmed both casualties, their voices rapid with professional concern. Odia helped Yolanda into the bird and settled her against the bulkhead. The helicopter lifted off, and she felt the jungle fall away beneath them. Ellington sat across from her. In the dim light of the cabin, she could not see his face, but she could hear his breathing. Steady now. Resolved. When we land, he said, there will be questions. About the mission. About your performance. About how we accomplished what we accomplished. Yolanda nodded. I need to know what you wanted to say. She considered the question. For 6 years, the answer would have been simple. Say nothing. Protect the secret. Protect Colonel Whitmore. Protect the lie that had given her life purpose. But something had changed in that jungle. Something had broken loose when Parks saw her eyes. Tell them the truth, she said. All of it. I am done hiding. The helicopter carried them through the darkness toward dawn. Toward consequences she could not predict. Toward a future she would have to navigate blind, just like everything else. But for the first time in 6 years, she was not afraid. The forward operating base was chaos organized in a purpose. Medical teams rushed to meet the helicopters before the skids touched ground. Yolanda heard the controlled urgency in their voices as they extracted Reyes and Vasquez, calling vitals and treatment protocols into the noise. Someone tried to put her on a stretcher. She refused. I can walk, she said, though the statement was more determination than truth. Oduya stayed at her side as they moved toward the medical facility. The rain had stopped completely now, and dawn was breaking over the Colombian jungle. She could feel the warmth on her face, the shift in air pressure that came with sunrise. Captain Mendoza met them at the entrance. Her voice carried relief, layered over professional concern. The hostage is secure. Your wounded are being treated. The mission was a success. She paused. There are already questions from command about how you accomplished what you accomplished. Those questions will be answered, Ellington said, but not until my people are treated. They took Yolanda into an examination room. A medic began cataloging her injuries with barely concealed amazement. The dog bite required irrigation and stitches. The leg wound needed debridement. She had lost enough blood to warrant a transfusion, though she refused it. Through the thin walls, she could hear other conversations. Reyes was in surgery. The bullet had nicked his femoral artery, but missed the bone. He would recover. Vasquez was stable. Her head injury serious, but not critical. Small mercies in a night defined by violence. The medic finished her work and stepped back. You should rest, Master Sergeant. Your body has been through significant trauma. Yolanda swung her legs off the examination table. There is something I need to do first. She found Oduya waiting outside. He fell into step beside her without asking where they were going. They moved through the base until she located what she was searching for. A communications center. Secure lines to the United States. I need to make a call, she told the specialist on duty. Stateside. Encrypted. The specialist hesitated, then nodded when he saw her rank and the blood still staining her uniform. He led her to a private terminal and stepped outside. Yolanda dialed the number from memory. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered, rough with sleep. This better be important. It is 4 in the morning. Coronel. It is Yolanda. The silence on the other end was heavy with sudden alertness. She heard him sit up, heard the creak of his bed frame. What happened? She told him everything. The mission, the storm, the moments when her abilities had been the difference between success and failure. The fall, the glasses. Park seeing her eyes. They know, she said. The whole team. They know what I am. What we did. Colonel Whitmore was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady despite what she knew he must be feeling. Are you safe? Yes. The mission was successful. Hostage recovered. My people are alive. And what happens now? She gripped the phone tighter. I told them I'm done hiding. I'm going to tell command the truth. All of it. Yolanda. His voice sharpened. If you do that, I go to prison. You know this. I know. And I am sorry. But there are others like me, Colonel. Soldiers with disabilities who could serve if someone gave them a chance. If I stay silent, they never get that chance. My secret protects us, but it condemns everyone who comes after. The colonel was quiet again. She could imagine him in his small house outside Fort Benning, surrounded by photographs of a son who never came home and a career that had defined his entire existence. "I knew this day would come," he finally said. "From the moment I walked into your hospital room, I knew eventually you would outgrow the lie. I just hoped I would be dead before it happened." "Colonel, listen to me, Yolanda. I am 63 years old. I have lived a full life. I served my country. I lost my son to a war I helped train him for. The only thing I have done in the last decade that matters is helping you become what you were meant to be. If prison is the price for that, I will pay it gladly." Her eyes burned, not with vision, but with tears she had not allowed herself to shed in years. "You gave me my life back," she said. "I cannot repay that by destroying yours. You repay it by being honest, by showing the Army what is possible when they stop limiting soldiers based on assumptions instead of abilities. You repay it by opening doors for people who are sitting in hospital rooms right now, being told their careers are over." She heard him take a breath, steadying himself. "Tell the truth, Yolanda. Let them court-martial me if they want. I will testify that everything I did was my choice, my initiative, my responsibility. You were a soldier following the guidance of a superior officer. That is the story, and I will make them believe it. I will not let you take the fall alone. You will do what I tell you to do, Master Sergeant. That is still how this works." He paused, and when he continued, his voice had softened. "I am proud of you, more proud than I have words to express. What you did tonight, what you have done for 6 years, that is a legacy worth protecting. Not mine, yours." The connection hummed with things neither of them could say. "I will see you soon, Colonel. I know you will. You have never let me down yet." She ended the call and sat in the darkness of the communications center, letting the weight of what was coming settle over her. Court-martial, investigation, her career dissected by people who would never understand what it cost to serve without sight. But also possibility, a door opening, a world changing, however slightly. Odia knocked on the doorframe. "The commanding officer wants to see you. And there is something else." "What?" Captain Mendoza found the mole. One of the Colombian liaison officers was feeding information to the cartel. "He's been detained." Yolanda processed this. The ambush, the sniper, the triple guard count, all of it traceable to a single betrayal. Did he say why? Money, family threats, the usual poisons. She stood, testing her wounded leg. It held barely. "Then let us go see the commanding officer. I have a story to tell." They walked together through the base, toward judgment and consequence and whatever future waited on the other side. The sun was fully up now, warm on her skin, illuminating a world she could not see but had learned to navigate anyway. One step at a time, just like always. The commanding officer's quarters occupied a corner of the FOB that smelled of old coffee and fresh tension. Colonel Marcus Webb sat behind a metal desk covered in maps and satellite imagery. Yolanda could not see him, but she could hear the way he shifted in his chair when she entered. The creak of leather, the subtle intake of breath that suggested he was assessing her. "Master Sergeant Achabe," he said, "I have been reading Captain Ellington's preliminary report. It contains some extraordinary claims." Yolanda stood at attention despite her wounds. "Yes, sir. He says you eliminated 17 hostiles during the extraction. 4 of them at the compound gates in zero visibility conditions. 6 more handlers with dogs. A sniper at 150 meters. And several others during the initial breach and subsequent pursuit." "That is correct, sir. He also says you did this while legally blind, that you have been serving with a visual impairment that should have disqualified you from duty 6 years ago." The words hung in the air like smoke. Yolanda felt the weight of them pressing against her chest. "That is also correct, sir." Webb was silent for a long moment. She heard him lean back in his chair, heard his fingers drumming against the desk. "I have been in the Army for 27 years, he said. "I have seen soldiers do remarkable things under pressure, things that defied training and logic and sometimes physics. But I have never heard of anything like what Captain Ellington described in this report." "I understand, sir." "Do you? Because I am not sure I do." He stood, and she tracked his movement by the sound of his boots on the concrete floor. He walked to the window, and she heard the blinds shift as he looked out at the base. I made calls while you were in medical, he continued. Try to access your service record. Your medical files. Everything's sealed. Classification levels I have never encountered for a non-commissioned officer. Someone very high up has been protecting you for a long time. Yolanda remained silent. There was nothing to say that would not make things worse. Webb turned back to face her. I also spoke with Agent Vasquez. She is awake and lucid. She told me that when your team breached the holding cell, she heard you moving through the compound. Said it sounded like you were everywhere at once. Said she heard you shooting in conditions where no one should have been able to aim. She wanted to survive, sir. I helped make that happen. You did more than that. Webb's voice shifted, losing some of its formal edge. She said she heard the cartel guards talking about you during her captivity, calling you La Ciega, the blind one. They did not know how accurate the name was, but they knew something unnatural was hunting them in that storm. He moved closer. She felt the air pressure change as he stopped in front of her. I'm going to ask you a direct question, Master Sergeant, and I need a direct answer. How did you do it? Not the technical details. I want to know how a woman who cannot see became the most effective combat sniper I have ever had under my command. Yolanda took a breath. The question deserved a real answer. 6 years ago, I lost my vision in a chemical weapons exposure during a classified operation in Syria. The Army wanted to discharge me, told me my career was over. But a retired Special Forces colonel named James Whitmore believed I could still serve. He trained me to shoot using sound instead of sight, taught me to navigate by spatial memory and environmental awareness. It took 2 years of work that nearly broke both of us, but eventually I learned to do my job without eyes. And the medical clearances that allowed you to return to duty. Forged, Colonel Whitmore arranged everything. He took the risk. He accepted the consequences. If anyone should face charges, it is him. I was just a soldier trying to serve my country. Webb laughed. The sound was unexpected, sharp with something that was not quite humor. You were just a soldier, he repeated. A soldier who carried a wounded man through a kilometer of hostile jungle with a torn arm and a shredded leg. A soldier who killed a sniper she could not see for 150 meters in a thunderstorm. A soldier who eliminated 17 enemy combatants in conditions that rendered every other operator effectively useless. He walked back to his desk and sat down heavily. I have a choice to make, Master Sergeant. I can report this through official channels. Launch an investigation. Court-martial you and Colonel Whitmore for fraud and deception. End your career and send an old man to prison. Yes, sir. Or I could do something else. Yolanda waited. The room felt smaller, suddenly, compressed by the weight of the moment. I can write a report that focuses on the mission's success, Webb said. I can describe the extraordinary performance of a sniper who operated effectively in conditions that would have defeated any other soldier. I can recommend you for a commendation that recognizes your actions without detailing the specific methods that made them possible. Sir, I came here to tell the truth. I'm done hiding what I am. Webb leaned forward. I understand that impulse, Master Sergeant. I respect it. But let me tell you something about the Army. It is an institution that changes slowly. Too slowly. If your story becomes public right now, it will not open doors. It will trigger investigations and hearings and policy reviews that will take years. The people who should benefit from your example will be stuck waiting while bureaucrats argue about liability and precedent. He paused, and when he continued, his voice was quieter. But if we are strategic, we can change that. Your team knows the truth. Agent Vasquez knows. I know. That is enough to start building a case for policy change through proper channels. Quietly, effectively, without destroying careers in the process. Yolanda processed his words. The offer was unexpected, a path forward that did not require sacrifice. What about Colonel Whitmore? I never heard his name, Webb said. As far as my report is concerned, your medical clearances were issued through standard Army channels. Whatever irregularities existed were administrative errors, not fraud. Sir, that is not the truth. No, it is not. but it is a version of the truth that protects people who deserve protection while still allowing us to do the right thing. Sometimes that is the best we can manage. She stood in silence, weighing the options. Truth or strategy? Justice or progress? The choice felt impossibly heavy. Then she heard footsteps approaching from the corridor. Multiple people. Urgent. The door burst open. Captain Mendoza's voice filled the room. Colonel Webb, we have a problem. The cartel commander escaped detention during the transfer. He has Sergeant Reyes as a hostage. He is demanding we release his men, or he will kill the sergeant on video. Yolanda's blood turned cold. Webb was already moving. Where? The motor pool. He has barricaded himself inside. He has a gun to Reyes's head. Yolanda pushed past her pain and followed them into the light. Reyes, the young sergeant who had joked with her on the flight down, who had trusted her to lead him through the darkness, who had almost died because a sniper's bullet found his leg. She had carried him through the jungle. She was not going to let him die now, not when she could still hear him breathing. The motor pool was a corrugated metal structure at the eastern edge of the base. Yolanda approached with the rest of the team, her senses mapping the crisis before anyone could brief her. She heard Reyes first. His breathing was rapid but controlled. The young sergeant was scared, but he was keeping himself together. Good. Panic would make everything harder. Then she heard the cartel commander. His voice carried the manic energy of a man with nothing left to lose. He was shouting in Spanish, demanding a helicopter, demanding the release of prisoners, demanding things he would never receive. And beneath both of those sounds, she heard the gun, the subtle mechanical whisper of a pistol pressed against flesh. The hammer cocked and ready. Ellington appeared at her side. His voice was low and urgent. Commander's name is Diego Salazar. He killed 2 guards during the escape, grabbed Reyes from the medical ward before anyone could stop him. He is inside the main bay with Reyes against the back wall. No clear line of sight from any entry point. Yolanda listened to the space. The motor pool had high ceilings, concrete floor, vehicles providing scattered cover. Sound bounced differently in there, creating echoes that would complicate targeting. How many entrances? 3. Main bay door on the south. Personnel door on the east. Emergency exit on the north. All currently covered by our people. Has he made specific demands? Helicopter within 30 minutes, or he starts sending body parts. He is broadcasting on a phone. Cartel propaganda in real time. She processed the information. 30 minutes was not enough time for a negotiated surrender. Salazar had no intention of letting Reyes live. This was theater, a final act of defiance designed to embarrass the Americans and create a martyr video. I need to get inside, Yolanda said. Ellington grabbed her arm. You are wounded. You can barely walk. And even if you could get in there, Salazar has Reyes directly in front of him. Any shot risks hitting the hostage. She turned toward his voice. What is the distance from the personnel door to Salazar's position? Approximately 20 meters. And the ambient noise inside. Generators running. At least one vehicle engine idling. The broadcast is creating feedback through the phone speaker. She built the acoustic map in her mind. 20 meters. Multiple sound sources creating interference patterns. A hostage positioned as a human shield. A gunman with a cocked pistol and nothing to lose. It was the hardest shot she had ever contemplated. I can do it, she said. Ellington's grip tightened. If you miss, Reyes dies. If I do nothing, Reyes dies anyway. At least this way, he has a chance. Colonel Webb had joined them. His voice carried command authority. What exactly are you proposing, Master Sergeant? Yolanda turned to face the sound of his voice. I enter through the personnel door. I use the vehicle cover to close the distance. When I have a clear acoustic picture of the target, I take the shot. Acoustic picture, Webb repeated. You're going to shoot a man holding a hostage based on what you hear. Yes, sir. The silence that followed was suffocating. She felt the weight of their doubt, their fear, their desperate hope that someone had a better idea. No one did. Do it, Webb said. God help us all. Yolanda moved toward the personnel door. Oduya fell in a step beside her. I'm coming with you, he said. No. The more people moving inside, the more noise interference. I need to hear him clearly. Oduya stopped. She felt his hand find her shoulder and squeeze once. Come back alive, sister. She did not respond. Promises were luxuries she could not afford. The personnel door opened with a whisper of hinges. Yolanda slipped inside and pressed herself against the nearest vehicle. The motor pool was a symphony of mechanical noise. Generators thrumming. An engine idling somewhere to her left. The distant crackle of Salazar's phone broadcasting his demands to the world. And through it all, she heard Reyes. His heartbeat, impossibly faint but present. The shallow rhythm of a man trying to stay calm while death pressed against his temple. She moved. Each step was calculated. Weight distributed to minimize sound. Feet finding concrete between oil stains and debris. She navigated by the echoes of her own movement, building a three-dimensional map of the space. Salazar was still shouting. His position had not changed. Back wall. Reyes in front of him. The pistol somewhere near the hostage's right ear based on the direction of his breathing. 15 meters. She crouched behind a transport truck and listened harder. The generator noise was masking details she needed. The idling engine was creating interference patterns that muddied her picture. Come on, she whispered to herself. Talk to me. Salazar obliged. He shifted his position, and she heard his boots scrape against concrete. He was standing with his weight on his left foot. His right arm was extended, which meant the gun was stable against Reyes's head. His left hand was holding the phone. She had him, but the shot was not clean. Reyes was directly in front, his body blocking the center mass. The only viable target was Salazar's head, a target approximately 6 inches in diameter, partially obscured by a hostage, from 12 meters away, using only sound to aim. She had made harder shots, in training, in controlled environments, never with a friend's life as the cost of failure. Yolanda raised her rifle. Salazar's voice cut through the noise. I know someone is in here. I heard you move. Come out now, or I put a bullet in this soldier's brain. Yolanda froze. Her breathing stopped. Her heartbeat slowed to a crawl. Salazar was listening. He had heard something, but he did not know where she was. Not yet. She waited. Seconds stretched into eternity. I'm not playing games, Salazar shouted. Show yourself, or he dies in 3 seconds. 1. Yolanda adjusted her aim by millimeters, following the sound of his voice. 2. She isolated his breathing from Reyes's, found the rhythm of his lungs, calculated the precise location of his skull. THR. She fired. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. The sound of a shot was swallowed by the motor pool's acoustics. Then silence. Then a body hitting concrete. Then Reyes's voice, shaking but alive. He is down. He is down. Oh God, Achebe, he is down. Yolanda lowered her rifle and allowed herself to breathe. 12 meters. Zero visibility. Through interference from generators and engines and the chaos of a hostage situation. The impossible shot. The one that no one should have been able to make. She had made it anyway. Because Sergeant Mateo Reyes deserved to go home. Because she had carried him through a jungle and refused to let that effort be wasted. Because some things mattered more than what was possible. The personnel door burst open. Footsteps rushed toward her. Hands found her shoulders, her arms, her face. Oduya's voice cut through the chaos. She did it. She actually did it. Yolanda let them guide her out of the motor pool and into the light she could not see. For the first time in 6 years, she did not feel blind. She felt invincible. The aftermath of the motor pool felt like waking from a fever dream. Yolanda sat on a crate outside the medical facility while a corpsman redressed her wounds for the 3rd time. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion that made even breathing feel like effort. Around her, the base had transformed. Word of what she had done had spread through the FOB like wildfire. She heard soldiers talking in clusters, their voices carrying fragments of a story that was already becoming legend. She shot him through a hostage situation, in the dark, using nothing but her ears. I heard she is blind, actually blind, has been for years. That is impossible. No one could do what she did without seeing. Oduya appeared, and settled onto the crate beside her. His presence was warm and familiar, an anchor in the chaos. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I have been better. I have also been worse." He laughed softly. "That is fair. You know everyone is talking about you. I can hear them. The story is going to spread. Beyond this base. Beyond Columbia. By the time we get back to Bragg, you're going to be famous whether you want to be or not." She had considered this. The shot in the motor pool had been witnessed by too many people, recorded by Salazar's own broadcast. The secret she had protected for 6 years was already gone. What remained was deciding what came next. "Colonel Webb wants to see you again," Oduya said. "He has been in communication with command stateside. Something is happening." They walked together to the command building. Yolanda's leg had stiffened, each step sending pain radiating through her calf, but she refused to limp. She had shown weakness to no one for 6 years. She was not about to start now. Webb's office was crowded when they arrived. Ellington stood against one wall. Park and Reyes occupied chairs near the desk. Reyes's leg was heavily bandaged, and he was pale from blood loss, but he had insisted on being present. Captain Mendoza stood near the window, her posture suggesting she was as curious as everyone else about what was coming. Webb gestured for Yolanda to sit. She remained standing. "I have spent the last 2 hours on secure communications with Fort Bragg, the Pentagon, and several offices whose names I am not authorized to share." Webb's voice carried a weight that made the room feel smaller. "What happened in that motor pool was captured on video. Salazar was live streaming when you took the shot. The footage shows a sniper eliminating a hostage taker with surgical precision in conditions that should have made the shot impossible." Yolanda said nothing. The implications were obvious. "That video is now in the hands of Army intelligence," Webb continued. "They have questions. A lot of questions. About you, about your medical history, about how any of this is possible." She felt the walls closing in. This was the moment she had feared for 6 years. The unraveling. The end. "However," Webb said, and his tone shifted slightly, "they also have Agent Vasquez. She has been very vocal about the fact that she is alive because of you. She has friends in Washington. Powerful friends. Friends who are more interested in understanding how you do what you do than in punishing you for concealing it." Yolanda processed this. The possibility of salvation instead of condemnation. "What does that mean, sir?" "It means the Army is faced with a choice. They can court-martial you for fraud and make an example of a soldier who saved American lives through extraordinary means. Or they can study you, learn from you, figure out how to train others to do what you do." Park spoke up. "Is that even possible? Can what she does be taught?" "That is what they want to find out," Webb replied. "There is already talk of a pilot program. Adaptive combat training for soldiers with visual impairments. Using your methods as the foundation." The words landed like physical blows. A program. Training others. The door she had dreamed of opening for 6 years, suddenly cracking open. "What about Colonel Whitmore?" Yolanda asked. Webb leaned back in his chair. "I spoke with him directly an hour ago. He's been offered a choice. Cooperate with the program as a consultant, share everything he developed during your training, and all questions about medical clearances disappear. Or refuse and face the full weight of military justice." "He accepted," Yolanda said. It was not a question. She knew the colonel. "He accepted," Webb confirmed. Enthusiastically. He said this was what he had been waiting for since the day he walked into your hospital room. The room was quiet. Yolanda felt the eyes of her team on her, felt their emotions radiating through the space. Pride from Oduya, respect from Park, gratitude from Reyes, and from Ellington, something that might have been admiration. "There is one more thing," Webb said. He stood and moved around the desk, stopping in front of her. "Your actions during this mission have been reviewed at the highest levels. The extraction of Agent Vasquez. The elimination of hostile forces in zero visibility conditions. The hostage rescue in the motor pool. Each of these actions demonstrated extraordinary valor and skill." He reached into his pocket and withdrew something small. She heard the clink of metal. "It is my honor to inform you that you have been recommended for the Silver Star. The official ceremony will happen stateside, but I wanted you to know now. The Silver Star. the third highest combat decoration in the United States Army. Awarded for gallantry in action, Yolanda stood frozen. She had spent 6 years hiding, fighting to prove herself while terrified of being discovered. And now she was being decorated for the very abilities she had concealed. "Sir," she managed, "I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything, Master Sergeant. You already said it. With 17 confirmed kills, a rescued hostage, and a teammate who is alive because you refused to let him die." Reyes's voice came from across the room, thick with emotion. "She carried me through the jungle with a torn-up arm and a bleeding leg. She carried me for almost a kilometer because she said quitting was not an option." Webb nodded. "That is exactly why you are receiving this honor. Not because of what you can do despite your blindness. Because of who you are. A soldier who refuses to quit, no matter what obstacles stand in her way." Yolanda felt something break loose in her chest. Something she had held tight for 6 years, compressed into a space so small she had forgotten it existed. She was not a fraud. She was not a liability. She was not a secret waiting to be exposed. She was a soldier, decorated and recognized and finally, impossibly free. "Thank you, sir," she said. Her voice cracked on the words. "Thank you." Webb placed the medal in her hand and stepped back. "Thank yourself, Master Sergeant. You earned this. Every step of the way." 3 months later, Fort Bragg welcomed spring with humidity and birdsong. Yolanda stood at the edge of a firing range that had been modified specifically for her program. Acoustic panels lined the walls. Targets were equipped with sound emitters that pulsed at varying frequencies. The traditional visual markers had been removed entirely. This was the Adaptive Combat Training Center. Her center, built from the ground up based on methods she had spent 6 years developing in secret. Colonel James Whitmore stood beside her, his voice carrying the gruff pride she had come to depend on. 12 candidates in the first cohort, he said. All of them told their careers were over. All of them proving the Army wrong. Yolanda listened to the range. She could hear the candidates moving through their drills. Footsteps finding positions. Rifles being raised. The subtle shift of breathing as they prepared to fire at targets they could not see. Sergeant First Class Diana Okonkwo was the strongest. She had lost her sight in Afghanistan when an IED turned her convoy into a fireball. 3 months ago, she had been processing discharge paperwork. Now she was putting rounds within 2 inches of center mass from 50 meters using only sound. Private Marcus Webb, no relation to the colonel, had been blind since birth. The Army had never considered him for combat roles. Now he was outperforming sighted soldiers in close-quarters navigation exercises. Each of them had a story. Each of them had been told no. Each of them was rewriting what was possible. The range officer called a ceasefire. Yolanda walked the line, stopping at each candidate, offering corrections and encouragement. Her own wounds had healed into scars that pulled when she moved too quickly. Reminders of a jungle that had tried to kill her and failed. "Sergeant Okonkwo," she said, stopping beside the woman. "Your breathing pattern is giving away your position. You are exhaling just before you fire." Predictable. An enemy would learn to listen for it. Okonkwo nodded. "Yes, Master Sergeant. I will work on it." "Good. You are improving. 3 weeks ago, you could not hit the target at all. Now you are putting rounds on steel. That is progress worth recognizing." She moved down the line, adjusting stances, correcting grips, teaching the same lessons Colonel Whitmore had taught her in the darkness of her despair. When the session ended, she walked back to the observation platform where Whitmore waited. He handed her a cup of coffee. She took it without needing to search for his hand. "You're good at this," he said. "Teaching. I had a good instructor." He laughed. The sound was warmer now than it had been 3 months ago. The shadow of prison had lifted from his shoulders. The fear of discovery had transformed into the pride of recognition. "The Army officially acknowledged your program yesterday," he said. "Full funding for the next 3 years. Expansion to other bases pending results." Yolanda absorbed the news. 3 years ago, she had been hiding in her quarters, terrified that each day would be her last in uniform. Now she was building something that would outlast her career. Footsteps approached from behind. She recognized them immediately. The confident stride that had once carried hostility but now communicated respect. "Captain Ellington," she said without turning. "Master Sergeant." He stopped beside her. "I wanted to let you know personally. The team is deploying again next month. Central Africa. High-value target extraction." She waited. There was more coming. "Command has approved your inclusion," Ellington continued. "Full operational status. No restrictions. You go where we go, do what we do." The words settled into her chest. Full operational status. No more rear security assignments. No more being sidelined while others did the work she had trained her entire life to perform. "I would be honored, Captain." Ellington was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had softened. "I spent 3 months trying to prove you did not belong on my team. I was wrong. You do not just belong. You make us better. Every single one of us." He extended his hand. She took it without hesitation. "See you at deployment briefing, Master Sergeant." He walked away. Yolanda listened to his footsteps fade and allowed herself a small smile. The afternoon brought visitors. Park and Reyes arrived together, their voices carrying across the range before they reached her. Reyes was walking without a limp now. The surgeons had repaired his femoral artery, and physical therapy had done the rest. He moved with the energy of a young man who had looked death in the face and decided to keep living. "Master Sergeant," he called out, "we brought someone who wanted to meet you." A third set of footsteps approached, lighter, feminine, accompanied by the subtle click of heels on concrete. "Master Sergeant Achabe." The voice was familiar from radio transmissions and hospital rooms. "Agent Carmen Vasquez." "Agent Vasquez, I'm glad to hear you are recovered. Because of you." Vasquez moved closer. Her hand found Yolanda's and squeezed. "I've been telling everyone who will listen about what you did. A blind sniper who killed 17 cartel soldiers in a thunderstorm to save my life. They think I am exaggerating." Yolanda smiled. "Let them think what they want. I also came to tell you something." Vasquez's voice grew serious. "The cartel network we disrupted has collapsed. For major arrests in the last month. The intelligence we recovered from that compound led to the largest takedown in Colombian history. You did not just save me. You saved thousands of people who would have been victims of their trafficking operations." The weight of those words was almost too much to hold. 17 kills in a jungle. One impossible shot in a motor pool. And somewhere on the other side of those bullets, thousands of lives continuing because evil had been stopped. "Thank you for telling me," Yolanda said. "It helps to know it mattered." Vasquez released her hand. "It mattered more than you will ever know." The day wound down toward evening. Yolanda stood alone at the edge of the range as the sun set. She could not see the colors painting the sky, but she could feel the warmth fading from her skin, could hear the birds settling into their night songs, could smell the change in the air as day surrendered to darkness. Oduya found her there. He did not speak at first, just stood beside her, his presence a comfort that required no words. "Big day," he finally said. "Every day is big now," she replied. "Every day someone tells me my program is changing their life. Every day I watch soldiers who were told they were broken learn that they are not. And what about you? Are you still broken?" She considered the question. 6 years ago, she had believed her blindness was the end of everything, that the darkness consuming her vision would consume her purpose as well. She had been wrong. The darkness had not destroyed her. It had transformed her, made her into something the army had never seen, something that could not be stopped by storms or shadows or the limitations others tried to impose. "No," she said finally, "I am not broken. I never was. I just could not see it until I stopped trying to see." Oduya laughed softly. "That might be the most profound thing you have ever said. Do not get used to it." They stood together in the gathering darkness. Behind them, the Adaptive Combat Training Center hummed with possibility. Ahead of them, a future that Yolanda had never dared to imagine. She had spent 6 years learning to navigate a world without sight. Now she was teaching others to do the same, building a legacy that would outlast her service, opening doors for soldiers who had been told those doors were permanently closed. The night settled around them, soft and familiar. Yolanda breathed it in and smiled. She did not need to see the stars to know they were there. If this story moved you, drop a comment about what resonated most. Maybe you know someone who proved the world wrong about what they could do. Or maybe you were that person. Either way, your story matters, just like hers.